Hey guys, Kurt from the Brixwell Group here. Before I get into today's video, I just wanted to say that I hope you've been getting some value out of the content that I've recently been putting out. If you have been, it would be great if you subscribe to our YouTube channel, like this video, and maybe even leave a comment with some topics that you'd like to see me make going forward, as I'm more than happy to cover basically anything that I've got knowledge or experience in, so don't be shy and just do it. Okay, so a question that my team is often asked by friends, family and clients, and a topic that I know is on the minds of most people considering an investment property purchase is, where is the best place for me to buy a property? As I'm sure you can imagine, the answer to this question is way more complicated and individualized than me just saying, here's the best area for everyone, buy this property and you'll win at life. And there's a lot of reasons why this is the case. To start with, let's use an example. What if I told you that the Sydney suburb of Vaucluse was the best place to invest in all of Australia for capital growth purposes? Then, what if I told you that the median house price in that area is over $5 million and that the rental yield is on average 2%? Which means that even if you did manage to get the finance, the cost of servicing the loan would end up costing you tens of thousands of dollars per year out of your own pocket just to keep the property in play. It's unlikely that you'd be able to do it, right? It's a huge sum of money. But does that mean that there aren't opportunities elsewhere where prices are more aligned with your borrowing ability, where the rental yields are more attractive, and where capital growth is still likely to occur over time? Of course there is. Does it mean that you should just forget about investing in property and building your portfolio? Of course it doesn't. On top of this, some people only want to invest if it's in the house next door, down the street, in a particular suburb, state or country. And that's fine too. But then there's no need to ask the question of where the best place to invest is, because you already know what you're going to do regardless of what our position is on the matter. Anyhow, for everyone else, the question is less about where the best place to invest is and more along the lines of, what are the things that I should actually be looking out for? I don't exactly know why anyone would want to do this, but as people say, there's a million ways to skin a cat. Obviously, there are a lot of things that you can do from a research and analysis standpoint when you're looking at investing in property, and the methods and criteria can be somewhat subjective. So today, I thought I'd give you 7 things that you can start with to get yourself moving in the right direction. Let's get cracking. Number 1, what are you looking to get out of this and where are you at now? This is going to take a little bit of self-reflection and goal setting on your side of things before you actually get started with property analysis, so that you know that you're headed in the right direction. What's the plan here? Why do you want to buy an investment property really? Are you looking for capital growth or positive cash flow, or both? Do you want to use property to build your nest egg for later in life? Are you trying to reduce the amount of tax you pay? Have you decided to become a rent investor because you're struggling to buy a property where you really want to live? Are you trying to build up a legacy for your family? Or is there some other reason that I haven't mentioned that is the real driving force behind this idea? Have you saved up a deposit, or are you going to need to use some equity that you've built up in your home? What's your time frame? That is, from now, when do you want to have made a decision, and how long are you planning on holding your investment for? Go through this so that you can look at the rest of our criteria and action it using logic that links in with the reasons that you're doing this, as opposed to letting your emotions get in the way and you end up buying something that doesn't work over the long term because you just had to have it based on what it looked like, as opposed to what it should have helped you to achieve. Number 2, finding areas with suitable median property prices. Okay, so back to where we left off in the example. Talk to your mortgage broker, bank, or our finance team and get an understanding of what your borrowing capacity is, so that you can start to identify areas that are gonna work for you from a price perspective. As I said, it's no real use looking at an area where properties are generally going for $1 million when you've only really got the ability to make a purchase of up to, say, $500,000. That's not to say there isn't going to be a deal in an expensive area from time to time, but a 50% discount, it's going to be unlikely. So I'd say there are better areas for you to spend your time and energy focusing on. Number 3, what does the vacancy rate look like in the area? It goes without saying that the lower the vacancy rate, the better. as this is an indication of how often your investment is going to be empty for each year. A low vacancy rate can help to demonstrate that an area is either highly desirable and lots of people want to live there, or that supply is more broadly constrained, meaning that there isn't enough property in the area for the number of people that either live there or want to live there. Either way, a low vacancy rate is generally a good sign that your property will be rented for the majority of the year, which in turn can positively impact rents and property prices of your investment over the course of your investment time horizon. When we run the numbers on a property, we look at the vacancy rate as a way of weighing down the amount of rent that we're expecting to see from it. This isn't an exact science, but it helps in showing a less favorable scenario from the cash flow side of things, meaning that if the numbers still work under these conditions, then you have a better chance of being able to handle the property even if it does have a period of vacancy. So if an area had a 3% vacancy rate, you take 52 weeks and multiply it by 3%, which would equal 1.56 weeks of vacancy. This means that you would expect this property to be tenanted for around 50 weeks and 3 days each year. Not bad. If you're conservative, then round down the number of weeks to give you an even more subdued result. Just remember that the higher the vacancy rate, the higher the probability that you're going to need to put your hand in your pocket to cover the mortgage for periods of time, which is something that we'd all like to avoid. Number 4, what does the rental yield look like? Just like a high vacancy rate, a low rental yield can have you putting your hand in your pocket. But unlike the property being vacant, this particular item can have long-term implications for you. Let's say you buy an investment property with 100% borrowed money and it's costing you 3.9% per year in interest to service the debt, but the rent that you're receiving is only 2.9% of the value that you paid for the property. Then, without taking into account other expenses, it's without a doubt that you're going to be paying out of pocket to maintain ownership over this property. Sydney is a great example of an area that doesn't yield well, where prices have run well ahead of rents, and it's arguably cheaper to rent a property to live in and then buy in another location as an investment than it is to own. Unless, of course, you bought your investment property a decade or more ago. To work out the yield in a property, we will generally call around and speak to some local agents about the property or the development site in question and get them to provide us with a rental appraisal based on the current market climate. We'll then use this weekly rental expectation, apply the vacancy rate to the weeks of the year, and divide the expected gross rent by both the value of the property and the value of the loan, so that we can understand what the yield looks like against the property and against the amount of money owed against the property. This helps to identify what type of return or costs we would be looking at in year 1 against other investment alternatives that we might be comparing against. Number 5. Is there a driver for population growth in the area? As you probably well know, many areas are more or less fully built up with very little land available for further development, and therefore putting a ceiling on population growth in that area. When this is the case, people who had bought in what is now a built up area many years ago, as it was still growing in terms of population, employment and amenities, will have often seen their property value increase over time as demand exceeded supply and competition grew from people who wanted to live in that area. Remember, people who manage to break into these types of markets will pay big money to get what they want, which in the future will help you out. If you're a long-term investor, it's important to keep this type of thinking in the back of your mind. If an area is affordable right now and you're seeing it built up in terms of the amount of properties being constructed, government infrastructure plans, incentives designed to help people move their families there, such as grants and schooling or increased employment opportunities, then these are the things that could help to drive population growth and will possibly create the situation that I mentioned in the first part of this topic, which is demand outstripping supply over the long term and your property appreciating in value over time. Number 6. Did you initially say that you wanted to save money in tax? If part of your overall reason for wanting to invest in property was to save money on tax, and now you're looking at a 20-plus-year-old house and you're thinking that this is the one, maybe you want to look at your goals again. If the property isn't providing you depreciation benefits, but you're still expecting a level of tax deductions for yourself, then it's probably through negative gearing, which isn't our favored way of doing things. I'll make a video about negative gearing in the future, and all I'll say right now is that new property is going to probably suit someone wanting to save some money on tax better than an existing dwelling. Number 7, what's in and around the area at the moment? What's planned? Why do people live here? And is there anything else that you should consider? Are there trains, buses, or other means of public transport around the area? If not, are these things earmarked for the future? Are there schools and daycare centres nearby? Where's the closest uni? How far away is the nearest hospital, grocery store, entertainment venue, and so forth? Are there loads of employment opportunities in the area relative to the number of people who live there? How much do people earn on average, and how could this influence house prices over time? This isn't an exhaustive list, but as you can see, there are so many other things that you could decide to look into and make part of your analysis if you have the time and can be bothered to put the effort in so that you're confident with your decision. In saying that, don't give yourself analysis paralysis, as this will stop you in your tracks, and 3 years down the road, you'll still be searching for options. Nothing is ever 100% perfect, and when you realize that, it'll be a hell of a lot easier for you to simply weigh up the pros and cons and execute on your decision. The items I just mentioned are all things that we consider when we're helping clients to decide on the right place to invest in. And we've come across loads of places with all or most of the hallmarks that we like to see. If you want to shortcut your path to property investment, we'd be happy to help you with this too. Alright guys, that's all for today. If you got something out of this video, then please be sure to like it, subscribe to our channel, and leave us a comment with any questions or suggestions for videos that you'd like to see in the future. As always, I've also left some resources and a link to our booking page in the event that you'd like some help with anything mentioned throughout the video. Thanks again, and I'll see you guys in the next video.